Picture this: a ship so massive it blocked out the sun when it pulled into port. A vessel so advanced that engineers called it practically unsinkable. And then, in less time than it takes to watch a movie, it was gone. Over 1,500 people dragged into water so cold it stopped hearts in minutes. But here's what nobody tells you: the disaster wasn't just bad luck. It was a chain of decisions, coincidences, and outright absurdities so bizarre they sound completely made up. 22 facts about the Titanic that will make you question everything you thought you knew. So before we even get to the iceberg, before the screaming, the chaos, the freezing water, there's a story that starts 14 years earlier, with a novelist who apparently saw the future. 1. The Prophecy. In 1898, 14 years before the Titanic set sail, a struggling author named Morgan Robertson published a novella called Futility. It featured a massive liner called the Titan that struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic in April, sinking with catastrophic loss of life. The ship matched the Titanic in size, speed, and capacity, and didn't have enough lifeboats. Robertson died in 1915, never fully explaining how he got it so right. 2. The Missing Key. 2 days before departure, Officer David Blair was pulled from the crew in a last-minute reshuffle. In the chaos, he walked off with the key to the crow's nest locker, the one holding the lookout's binoculars. The replacement crew had no key and no way to get them. Lookout Frederick Fleet later testified at the official inquiry that with binoculars, he would have spotted the iceberg sooner. When asked how much sooner, enough to get out of the way. 3. The 37 seconds. Fleet spotted the iceberg at 11:39 p.m. on April 14, 1912. From that moment to impact, 37 seconds. Naval engineers who reconstructed the collision calculated that had the iceberg been spotted just 30 seconds earlier, the Titanic would have cleared it entirely. 30 seconds, the length of a TV commercial. That's the margin between 1,500 deaths and a story nobody ever tells. 4. The Fatal Decision. Here's the twist that haunts engineers to this day. First Officer Murdoch ordered the ship to turn and the engines to reverse. Standard procedure. But reversing slowed the turning radius. A head-on collision would have flooded only 2 or 3 compartments. The ship could have survived. Instead, the glancing blow tore open 6, one more than the Titanic could handle. The evasive maneuver sank the ship. 5. The Ghost Ship. While the Titanic was sinking, another vessel sat less than 20 kilometers away. The SS Californian had stopped for the night due to ice. Its crew saw the distress rockets. Multiple witnesses confirmed it. But the wireless operator was asleep, and officers decided the rockets were probably just company signals. The Californian didn't move. By the time it arrived the next morning, there was nothing left but wreckage. 6. The Drill That Never Happened. On the morning of April 14th, the very day the Titanic sank, a lifeboat drill had been scheduled. Captain Edward Smith canceled it. No official reason was ever recorded. Had it taken place, passengers would have known where to go and crew would have been practiced in loading procedures. The chaotic, deadly evacuation that followed might have looked completely different. The cancellation remains one of the most debated decisions in maritime history. 7. The Capacity. The Titanic's deck had physical space for 64 lifeboats, enough for everyone on board. White Star Line installed 20. Internal discussions at the time cited aesthetics. More boats would clutter the deck and spoil the first-class experience. The ship actually exceeded the legal minimum, because maritime law hadn't been updated since ships were far smaller. Bureaucracy and vanity, working together, sentenced over 1,000 people to death. 8. The half-empty boats. Even with only 20 lifeboats, they couldn't fill them. Lifeboat number 7, the very first launched, left with just 28 people in a boat built for 65. Lifeboat number 1 carried only 12, against a capacity of 40. Passengers refused to board, convinced the ship was safer than a small wooden boat dangling over dark water. The lifeboats that night averaged 60% capacity. Hundreds of people who could have been saved were left on deck. 9. The orchestra. As the ship tilted and the water rose, 8 musicians gathered on deck and played. They played for over 2 hours, waltzes, hymns, ragtime, while lifeboats rowed away and screaming echoed from below. Bandleader Wallace Hartley told his musicians they didn't have to stay. They stayed anyway. Not one survived. Their last confirmed song, according to multiple survivors, was the hymn "Nearer, My God, to Thee." They played until the deck was nearly vertical. 10. The Baker Hero. Charles Jewin, the Titanic's chief baker, spent the final hours throwing deck chairs overboard for people in the water to cling to. Then, he rode the rising stern down like an elevator, stepped off into the ocean, and treaded water for nearly 2 hours in temperatures that killed most people within minutes. He attributed his survival partly to the considerable amount of whiskey he'd consumed that night. He was pulled from the water with barely a case of swollen feet. 11. The Fake Funnel. The Titanic had 4 iconic smokestacks, a symbol of industrial power that made it the most photographed ship of its era. 3 were real. The 4th was purely decorative, added for visual symmetry because 4 funnels looked more powerful than 3. It served one minor practical function, as a kitchen ventilation shaft. Mostly, it was there to make the ship look unstoppable. White Star Line understood that perception was everything. As it turned out, perception was all they had. 12. The film cost more. James Cameron's 1997 film Titanic had a production budget of around $200 million. The actual ship cost roughly $7.5 million to build in 1912, between $120 and $150 million in today's money. The movie cost more than the ship. Cameron went so far over budget, he offered to forfeit his director's fee entirely. The film grossed over $2.2 billion worldwide and won 11 Academy Awards. The ship, famously, did not make it to New York. 13. The only Japanese. Masabumi Hosono, a Japanese government official traveling second class, survived by boarding one of the last lifeboats. Back in Japan, he wasn't celebrated. He was condemned. Newspapers called him a coward. He lost his government job. The cultural expectation was that a man of honor should have gone down with the ship rather than take a seat from a woman or child. Hosono spent the rest of his life defending his decision to live. He died in 1939, still carrying the stigma. 14. The Wreck. The Titanic sank on April 15, 1912. For 73 years, no one knew exactly where it was. It sat in total darkness, 3,800 meters below the surface, undisturbed and unmapped. On September 1, 1985, oceanographer Robert Ballard finally located it, split into 2 massive sections, nearly 600 meters apart on the ocean floor. When the cameras first captured the debris field, Ballard later said, the entire team fell completely silent. 15. The bacteria. The wreck is disappearing. A bacterial species discovered on the hull in 2010, named Halomonas titanicae, feeds on the ship's iron, producing the rust formations called rusticles that now coat the entire structure. Scientists estimate the Titanic will be completely unrecognizable within 20 to 30 years. The grand staircase is already gone. The gymnasium, the cabins, the promenade deck, all collapsing inward, eaten alive by microbes in the dark. 16. The price of a ticket. A first-class parlor suite on the maiden voyage cost $4,350 in 1912, over $100,000 today. Third-class passengers paid around $36 and slept in shared cabins near the waterline. The price difference wasn't just comfort, it was survival. When the ship sank, first-class passengers had a survival rate of roughly 60%. Third-class passengers had a survival rate of under 25%. The Titanic didn't just sort passengers by wealth. It sorted them by who got to live. 17. The unsinkable Molly Brown. Margaret Brown had clawed her way from poverty to wealth and was not going to sit quietly in a lifeboat. After boarding lifeboat number 6, she organized passengers to row, argued with the quartermaster who refused to go back for survivors and pushed hard to return to the wreck site. She was overruled. Aboard the rescue ship Carpathia, she organized relief efforts and raised over $10,000 for survivors who had lost everything. She reportedly found her famous nickname completely ridiculous. 18. The dogs. At least 12 dogs traveled aboard the Titanic in the kennel on F deck. 3 survived: a Pekingese belonging to first-class passenger Henry Harper, and 2 Pomeranians small enough to be smuggled under coats into lifeboats. The remaining 9, including a French bulldog named Gamin de Picom, insured for $750, went down with the ship. Several passengers reportedly returned to the kennel before the end to release the dogs, giving them at least a chance in the water. 19. The Black Iceberg. Every painting and film shows a white iceberg gleaming in the moonlight. Survivors described something very different. Multiple witnesses reported the iceberg appeared almost completely black, dark, nearly invisible against the night sky. When an iceberg flips, the dense, compressed ice on the underside absorbs light rather than reflecting it. The Titanic wasn't sailing toward a glowing white mountain. It was sailing toward a wall of darkness in the dark, without binoculars. 20. The Last Message. At 2:17 a.m. on April 15th, wireless operator Harold Bride sent the Titanic's final distress transmission. The position coordinates were slightly off, a navigational error that initially sent rescue ships to the wrong location. Bride survived, clinging to an overturned collapsible lifeboat. His colleague Jack Phillips, who had been transmitting for over 2 hours straight, did not. Phillips kept sending until the power failed. The last signal from the Titanic cut off mid-transmission. 21. The shoes. Researchers exploring the wreck have noted something deeply unsettling about the debris field. There are no skeletons. The cold water and bacteria consumed everything organic long ago. But scattered across the ocean floor, in the mud and silt, there are pairs of shoes, lying side by side, exactly as they would have been on a person's feet. Leather resists the bacteria. The people did not. Those paired shoes are the only physical evidence that a human being once lay there in the dark at the bottom of the Atlantic. 22. The coal fire. This one was buried for decades. Evidence shows a fire had been burning in Coal Bunker 6, directly adjacent to the hull, for days before the ship even left Belfast. Stokers knew about it. The fire burned at over 1,000 degrees Celsius against the steel wall at the exact location where the iceberg struck. Metallurgical analysis suggests the heat may have made the steel brittle and more likely to fracture on impact. The Titanic may have been compromised before it ever left port.